Let's get it on then, shall we? Mwah. Welcome to Sex on the Peach, your weekly hump day dose of everyone's favourite untalked about topic, sex. Let's get honest, let's get open, let's get comfortable, and let's get in to this week's show. Friends, lovers, listeners, happy Wednesday, happy hump day, and yes, happy Sex on the Peach Day. It is, of course, Pride Month, and so I want to spend the rest of the episodes this month celebrating voices within the queer community. And today I'm very, very grateful to be joined by my gorgeous friend, Taofique Folarin, or as he is more commonly known to me as Taz, because we have known each other for a very long time, and we'll be starting at the very beginning where we met at college. And that's its own story because stage schools are very sexually charged environments. And our journeys have really continued alongside each other. We both work in the musical theatre industry, we both work for the same fitness company, and we're both studying fields of psychology. So I'm really excited to talk with Taz today. And I think it's so important to promote the voices and the lived experiences of those in marginalised communities. So we will be discussing Taz's journey in the Black queer community, the wonderful things that come with that, and of course also the challenges. Taz is currently in an interracial relationship, which is something that we discuss at length as well. And of course, we answer all of the questions that you have sent in today. So thank you very much to everyone who did. I definitely took a lot from this conversation in terms of education. So I hope that to anyone listening that you enjoy it and you learn as much from it as I did. But for now, let's get into it for today. Here is Here, AfroQueer, and Thriving. Taz, thank you so much for joining me today on Sex on the Peach. I'm very grateful to have you here as a guest today in Pride Month, nonetheless. I mean, we go way, way back to our college days together, where many people could say our sexual journeys started. Obviously, the listeners would agree with that because their first question that's been sent in today was Peach just as sketty in college?
What's the tea? I have it all. Well, we never hooked up, but then...
Well, we never hooked up.
Although we did share a tender moment.
We shared a tender moment that was the poster for many an Italian Conti show.
Which will live on forever, yes.
Taz and I were the poster children for the end of year shows. And it was meant to be a little cute moment from Les Mis, but it looked...
like I was behind you with my eyes rolling to the back, like in full climax moment at the age of like 17.
It was giving strong doggy style vibes. But I would say people don't talk enough about the sexual energy that runs around a stage school because it's pretty intense. Obviously, you know, our experiences would have been very different. And was I just as sketchy in college? I think you would say no.
Yeah, I think no, don't put words in my mouth. But I feel like college Peach was a little more reserved, right? But also like complete different look. I wish we could like flash some like old school pictures from college days. Very different. Still hot, but very different.
Brunette Peach and blonde Peach are two very different gals.
Yeah. No, I don't think you were that sketty, but also love that we're bringing back this word sketty.
I brought it back. I was like, do you know what? It deserves its moment in the sun. And why are we making promiscuous woman a bad thing? So I'm reclaiming it. But I never hooked up with anyone at college. I was giving, I've said this on a previous episode, very sensible. Very, very sensible.
Hmm.
I was always like, I'm not hooking up with anyone here because there's so few straight men and so many women. It's
Yeah.
only going to end in tears. And I used to say to the girls, what did you expect? Who did I think I was? I was like 15. If only I'd
Yeah.
brought that into my musical theatre career, because I want to be sensible moving forward.
Well, it does just grow on, doesn't it? Like the same kind of incestuous,
Yeah.
highly sexually charged environment and that energy, kind of like we just take it from college and then it goes into the rehearsal room, from the rehearsal room. But like we get so close to each other.
Yeah.
So I don't think I was a scare at college. No, I definitely wasn't.
Did you hook up with many people at college?
I purposely didn't come out until I got to college thinking, great, I can live my best gay life. Got to college and was like, oh, like no offense if you are listening, but I was like, okay, right, I'm gonna stay in the closet because like all the boys in the year above were straight,
Yeah,
or
that
at
was a very
least
straight year.
yeah. And then our year we had two other gay guys
Hmm.
and not very similar to myself. So I didn't see that, I didn't identify with them. And then as we moved up through the years, the year below, also not. And then a very beautiful boy joined college, rest his soul, and he was my boyfriend. And so I did hook up, but I wasn't a sket about it. I fell in love.
Do you feel like that drama school environment had sort of any impact on like your sexual energy moving forward? Because I feel like we were thrust into a different type of sexual energy that I was seeing amongst my other friends who were just at a normal college.
Yes, yes. I don't know if it's the college environment or if it's the work that we're doing.
Mm,
Because even if we're rehearsing Les Miserables or if we're rehearsing, I don't know, Chicago, like they all have a sexual adult element and the themes are very adult. So we
yeah.
went to college, well, you were at the college like even younger than I was, and I went at
Mm.
16. So to be playing those roles or be trying to get into a headspace and a physicality of someone that is like 25 when you're 16. Yeah, I don't know. It's not, is it problematic? I don't think it's problematic. So yeah, I think that has a lot to do with it. Like the work that we're doing, the work that we're trying to get into is kind of beyond our years.
Yeah.
Even in dance class and like a lot of the routines that we're doing, we're jiving and thrusting and sweating on each other and
Yeah.
gyrating and
I think you're
yeah.
definitely almost forced to embrace your body in like a sexual way, in a way
Mm-hmm.
that maybe other people aren't at that age. They're just figuring it
Right.
out. But you're sort of like, even you're in very, very thin ballet tights giving it pas de deux.
Right.
You're sort of like forced to be getting
Yeah.
very, very like close to people
Yeah.
in a way that otherwise you might just be doing out of choice rather than like,
Exactly. Or you're
here I
waiting till
am
you're like,
arabesquing in this person's space.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Like normally, I feel like if you're not at performing school, like that may wait until you're like in the club,
Yeah.
for your first
In the
experience dancing
club.
with someone in the club, whereas we are doing it in the rehearsal room.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I don't ever remember feeling like, and I mean, we've known each other a really long time. I don't personally
Hmm.
remember a moment of coming out. What was that experience and when was that?
Andy.
Okay.
Yeah, so Andy was again, he's no longer with us, so rest his
Yeah.
soul, beautiful being, was my first love, I would say.
Uh-huh.
And I remember he joined a year below me, and that was my coming out because I was like, yeah, I don't need to come out. And also I was always of that mindset, it's not your business,
Absolutely. Yeah,
it's not your business.
absolutely.
It wasn't that I didn't feel comfortable to come out because it definitely was an environment where I could have been like, "Hey, I'm gay," and everyone
Yes.
would be like,
Yeah.
"Okay." And actually, when it did happen, I kind of wish I got a bigger response than I did because everyone was like, "All right, you with Andy, mate. Cheers, great." And I was like, "Oh, is that it?" So that was my coming out moment at college, which is
Uh-huh.
very different for me coming out to my family. That came later, but also
Okay.
Andy was the catalyst for that. I think it felt I was in a safe moment, a safe season of my life where I had found someone. I was celebrating my sexuality and had someone to celebrate that with. And that love kind of gave me that confidence and security to kind of
Hmm.
step into my authenticity and to own that.
Yeah.
And it kind of made me go, give two shits. Do
Yeah.
not care. If you have something to say, I don't give a shit. I've got my man and we're good.
Yeah.
So yeah. And I think that was in my second year. So I was 17.
Yeah.
And it's funny because there was a boy also in our year, but he was on the other course.
Uh-huh.
And we had had like a moment, an explorational moment in a youth theatre group before I went to college. So then when we saw each other, I was like, what? Okay, okay, okay. What do I do? And I just kind of said to him, I'm not out. Okay, keep it to yourself. He didn't. It kind of like filtered through like a few people, but hey, it happens.
I mean, listen, I don't love the term coming out. I think we need to come up with something else anyway,
I have
because
one.
oh,
It,
okay, please let us have it.
and it's letting in, because this whole
Yeah.
thing of like coming out, like we have to, like we're hiding away and we need to come out to people and be like, oh, this is who we are, when actually no, we are who we are. And
Yeah.
whatever your sexuality, that is just a given. So how about I let you in to know me more, rather than it's some big thing that I'm doing for you. No, I'm not
Yeah.
doing anything for you.
Yeah.
Actually, you're getting to know
Absolutely.
me. Yeah.
And like, we don't sit down and go, just to let you know, I'm straight.
Right. Right.
It is such a weird concept that we don't ever have to sit people down and say, just to let you know, I will be adhering to the societal norms that are expected of me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no one ever says
No.
that. And I would say I am of massive privilege in that I've never come out. I think the most I've ever said was like a post on Instagram about celebrating Pride as a pansexual.
Mm-hmm.
And that's like the closest I've ever been to like announcing
Mm-hmm.
anything to
Mm-hmm.
anyone. And that does come from a place of immense privilege that I've always known I could have gone home to my family and taken someone of any gender or gender identity and just said, this is my partner.
Mm-hmm.
And they would have been like, great.
Mm-hmm.
They wouldn't have been like, oh, Maria's dating a woman
Uh-huh.
now, or Maria's dating a non-binary person. That conversation wouldn't have
Mm-hmm.
happened, you know.
And how did
So
you know that? Like, how is that through your relationship with your family that you felt so secure in that whoever you brought home, it would be accepted?
I think they've just always been very liberal, you know, and I've always known that. And it's always been put forward to me from a very young age that whatever I decided to do with my life in any capacity was always going to be fine by them as long as I was safe.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've always had a problem with the concept of coming out. So I never would have felt the need to sit down and tell
Mm-hmm.
them I'm any which
Mm-hmm.
way, because I wouldn't have ever sat them down to tell them I was
Right, right. Yeah.
straight. And I think I've always had an issue with that.
Mm-hmm.
So I like that concept of letting people in.
Mm-hmm.
You can see more of me, you can know more
Right.
of me, rather than I'm presenting my identity to you. I've just
Exactly.
never been a fan of
Mm-hmm.
that. You know, here we are in Pride Month, here in Queer and Thriving. Absolutely thrilled about
Oh
it.
yeah.
One question that was sent in today was, have you ever felt a disconnect between different communities you belong to, like the Black community and the queer community?
A disconnect between them. Interesting like word, disconnect. Because
Mm,
for me, I'm AfroQueer, so I'm a Black queer man. So they're
yeah.
connected. Like it's a part of me. So that's the intersectionality, two of the intersectionalities that I have. So it's a strange one because no, I don't feel that disconnect because it is me, and I don't feel disconnected. I'm
Sure.
very connected to who I am and my essence. If I was to separate and look at the communities separately, obviously you have like a very white homogenous part of the gay community, and then there's a very Black part
Yeah.
of the gay community, and then you have the Black community, which is then split up. You have like Ghanaians, Jamaicans, it's so rich, and there's so many
Yeah.
layers to both communities that there's going to be differences. But like I think for myself, I embrace both communities and parts of the cultures that come with both communities. My heritage is Jamaican, and I feel like if there is any disconnect, it's also actually not from my culture because I love my Jamaican culture. I'm like a Jamaican boy through and through. However, there's still a few things which are problematic as far as like the homophobia within the country. However, that's not for me, that's not a reflection on Jamaicans on a whole. That is like systemic, and that stems from
Yeah.
colonization. And so it's about educating to know that, so I can still take pride in my culture. So no, like I think if anything, rather than a disconnect, I like it makes me even more rich. And I'm not talking about the dollar.
We work in
Yeah,
theatre,
well,
so
this is it. Yeah, no, I think it just adds more to my own uniqueness and what I bring to the table. And there's parts of both sides which I love, and I really love when they intertwine as well. In
yeah,
London, there's a huge Black gay community who are beautiful and just yeah. Also, we're not just one, right? It's like
yeah,
what just sometimes bug me is that being boxed in that black gay community is like this, the black community is like this, which isn't the case at all. We're humans, so we're
yeah,
multifaceted and we all present differently, and that's what makes communities, whatever community you're a part of, so beautiful. Otherwise, it'd be hella boring.
absolutely.
We'd be like AI.
Yeah,
It'd be like AI, like all robots. So yeah, I try and like delve into that. I think there's been times where, and I don't know if it's necessarily culturally. I think there are a few barriers which I think can come up culturally for Black gay men. However, I also think it's really important to change that narrative. So I don't want to give it too much airtime. For instance,
sure.
it took me a long time to come out to my extended family, who are in the
Okay,
Midlands, and purely out of fear and assumptions, which were rooted in perhaps like some cultural music, which is known to be homophobic in Jamaican music, and also like just being around like quite hyper masculine or hyper masculine presenting people, which then I think instilled a fear, and installed a fear which kept me separate from my own family as far as letting them
okay,
in to know who I am fully. So that took a while.
yeah,
However, like I feel like it's important to change that narrative because it was absolutely fine. And there was a moment in time where I distanced myself because I didn't want to let them in. I didn't want them to see me. And that does nothing for a relationship, right? That just causes
yeah,
distance. And all through assumptions, which I think a lot of the time, like anything, is also partly conditioning. It only has to take one thing that's, oh, Jamaica's really homophobic, oh, the black community are quite homophobic, or whatever that is, or you might have one bad experience, and that fits with you and stays with you, and that can then limit you from living your own truth. Whatever you
yeah,
decide, whatever race you are, whatever background you come from, it can always go one of two ways, right? You like,
hmm,
it's great when you can feel confident, like that is it's going to be positive, but truth is you never know, and
yeah,
that
yeah, yeah,
keeps,
of
yeah, and that
course.
keeps people, again, I've got to say in the closet, but like that stops people from letting others in, you know
Yeah.
um which is a shame, but it's just the sad reality that we live in.
Yeah. And I think as well, because it's interesting, and I think this sort of plays into what you were just saying, because another question that someone had sent in saying, when it comes to your sexual desires, how do you deal with stereotypes about black masculinity
Hmm.
and sexuality? And I think that plays in a little bit to what you were just saying. And I do think one time I did a podcast episode with Shakira Scott, who is a plus size
Hmm.
black female sex influencer. And so much of it is to do with representation
Hmm.
that we've seen, like the sort of hypersexualization of black people, especially black women, like in the
Hmm.
media and in movies and across time. And all of that has such an influence on people
Hmm.
on how they think they should be presenting or
Hmm.
should be
Hmm.
behaving. There's a lot of stereotypes around
Hmm.
masculinity and around black
Hmm.
masculinity and sexuality. Do you feel like you come across that still, or do you feel,
100%.
oh, you okay?
100%. Like black fetishization is a thing, and it is
Yes.
rife in the gay community. I mean, I know it is also in like the straight community as well, but my
Yeah.
experiences are predominantly in the queer community. Actually, no, to be fair, I've had some in the straight community when I used to do butlers in the buff, making that dollar back in the day. And like the way women would be like trying to put their hands underneath my apron and be like, oh, I bet you've got a big one. Sorry,
Yeah. Yeah.
hold up, rewind and pull back. And this whole like BBC, like that is rife. And I feel like a lot of it yes, it comes through representation of this kind of hyper masculine black male that's really strong, and like the movies that used to come out back in the day of like taking the woman and like running around with her and like just ravaging her, like all of that kind of toxic. So yeah, that kind of stays with people. So what I've come up against in the gay community is this. I mean, obviously, you know gays. You've got lots of gay friends, including me. Like the
Yep.
whole top bottom verse conversation.
Sure.
Very often, as a black gay man, people will make that assumption that I'm a top and make that assumption purely based on like give a shit how I carry myself. Like I embrace both my feminine and my masculine, and at different degrees at different times. That's my prerogative, right? So, and it's so interesting depending on what I'm wearing, or that people will make that assumption or want that from me. If they feel like they have that right to kind of put that label on me. I'm like, no. Yeah, but you know what? It also happens outside of the black gay community, like as in it also happens like white men also face the same thing. If you're more femme, it's that
you're
assumption that you're a bottom then. You know, you're a sub bottom. And if you're really big, oh, you must be a top. But actually, normally it's not the case. Not the case. And it is really problematic. And then on the apps as well, it can be horrendous. Like the prejudice, the racism, the like no blacks, no Asians, no this, no this, no that. You know, like just keep that shit to yourself. You know,
yeah, no, absolutely.
Why put it on your profile?
I've got no experience of dating apps at all.
Well, you should try Grindr. I hear it's really good.
I feel like I'd be great on Grindr.
Yeah, you would do really well.
Someone has also said, how do you cope with racism and or homophobia? Because God knows, even though it's 2024, it's still fucking rife.
Again, I find the word cope problematic because, you know, you can cope when you get a medical condition. You can cope when you've got the flu. You like these things which sometimes are out of your control. You know, it's just a part of life.
Yeah.
Racism, it is a part of life. Should it be a part of life? No, because people have a choice to be good people.
Yes.
And people have a choice to be ignorant, and people have a choice to be racist. So personally, it's not about coping. It's more about I accept that there's racists. I accept that as a black man, I'm going to have a lot to come up against. And I have had a lot to come up against.
Okay.
So once I've accepted that and I accept people for who they are, those racists for who they are, then I can get on with my life because their prejudice and their ignorance, although it's going to have an effect on me, and it does have an effect, it's not for me to take on.
Yeah,
because,
of course.
You know, and that it's taken me quite a while for that. But the part that I do take on is to fight against it on a more
on a
macro scale.
Yeah.
Right. And that's for me to then make a change for if I ever have a little one, for my little one or my friend's little one or my little cousins coming up, you know, to be able to educate them that there's people out there that they just vibrate on a low frequency.
Do you even engage with people? Do you even want to try and educate them?
I think there's always people that are willing to learn. And I think, like anything in life, having an open mind, so you end up improving yourself and growing yourself, which in turn has a bigger impact on the world, the human race, and making change is important. Not everybody vibrates like that.
Yeah.
They just don't. But a lot of people do. And it's those people that I'm willing to give the time to. It's not my place to educate people on racism. There's certain moments, I think, where there's like misunderstandings, or sometimes people just don't know or just don't realize because it's not their world, or they don't have a lot of black friends or Asian friends, or they just live in a very homogenous circle.
Yeah.
Which then automatically, for me, limits your ability to empathize with others, to connect with others, if you're only used to everyone that
you don't know any different.
Everyone rolls like you, sis. So, you know, so when you come across something different, the only thing you have to go by is TV, is Coronation Street, is whatever. So I feel like there's certain people which I'm willing, when there's a misunderstanding, to take a moment to explore. So we can get to a place of understanding. I don't think it always is negative. And I think being in conversation is important, because without that conversation, change doesn't
It can't
come.
happen. Yeah.
Yeah, but also I'm not willing to kind of emotionally, mentally, or physically tax myself in order to do that.
Yeah.
You know?
I don't think it can be your responsibility to educate everyone else on what it means
No,
to be a Black
there's books
person.
out there.
Yeah,
Read a
there are
book. I mean, it was
books.
Black Lives Matters. Like, do we even need to go into it? Like, there's a list. Type it in Google.
I was going to say around that time, we saw people saying, you know, what do I do?
Mm-hmm.
How can I better understand? And I then could see my friends in the Black community saying, it's not my responsibility
Mm-hmm.
to give you that information. Like,
Mm-hmm.
that information is
Mm-hmm.
out there for you to go and find it. Like, we can converse, but I'm not
Mm-hmm.
I'm not here to teach you,
Mm-hmm.
you know, what it means, what my experience is. That's up to you to go. And if you really want to be
Yeah.
an ally, that's up to you to go
Yeah.
and
And
find
it
that
is. And, you know,
information
and
out.
also, but, you know, which I completely agree. But I feel like from a, if someone is kind of removed from my life, like a stranger or not really in my circle, then for sure. But I like, there's people within my circle which I will give time to if people are willing to sit and hear my experience. And there's beauty in that, right?
Yeah.
I feel like all that chat as well, like around like education through books, like it is all like very Black Lives Matter. It's very COVID times, and it's so interesting how that conversation has dwindled so quickly.
Yeah.
One of the main things which I noticed, which I will share with you, so obviously I got my little dog Sargi. I really noticed a difference, because I think the biggest thing when it comes to racism, which I feel, I don't think I've really ever shared this apart from with my partner, who is white, by the way. And
Uh-huh.
so one of my first hates is when I travel on the train. Very often, I always notice people choose other seats. Now, me, I know for a fact I would rather sit where there's more space. Very, very often, the majority of the time, and because I always watch and I see, I'm like, well, what's going to happen today? People always go and choose to sit where it is busier, far more uncomfortable than sit next to myself. Now, I can only make that assumption is because I'm a Black boy,
Right.
and whatever schemas they are holding in their mind, schema being like pre interpretations of a human being for based on culture,
Sure.
race, etc. So then to choose that really always really hurts me as well, because I know I'm a nice guy and I know that like we could probably like kiki and have a good old chat, you know, but
Yeah.
you've chosen to be uncomfortable. And it's also very interesting, also depending on what I'm wearing. I say this to my partner all the time, like I work in fitness.
Yeah.
I wear a tracksuit.
Yeah.
You
Sure.
know, I wear a very cute tracksuit,
We're all in our
Nike
comfy
tracksuit,
activewear all the time,
right?
babe.
All the time. But you wearing your comfy activewear, I'm sure you're going to have to come across like catcalling
Sure.
and like unwanted, unsolicited. Me wearing a tracksuit, I have to come across about people walking across the road or people choosing not to sit by me, or you know.
Yeah.
So it's it's a sad thing. So I urge anybody listening, next time you choose not to, just maybe go, actually, I'm going to sit here anyway, you know.
Yeah, if you see
Um,
Taz on on the tube, go and have a kiki.
Go and have a kiki with me. And then I noticed during Black Lives Matters, actually, like I was walking Sargi. So it is partly like having a dog, but I walk in that park all the time. Just like there was a lot of like, hi, how are you? Like an effort. Like you feel like almost a little bit contrived, but
Sure.
an effort
You're
anyway.
like, people are trying.
Yeah, now I walk Sergeant. Nothing. Like, hi.
They're like, we've moved on to the next bit of performative activism,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
right. Well, this is it. I mean, and the world's a messy place right now, isn't it? But I just think we can always all do better,
I
you know. And
completely
it
agree.
doesn't always come down to race, but like we all as humans, that is the only race in my eyes, anyway. Because race is a
Yeah,
construct. Yeah,
absolutely.
we can all do better.
I agree. We all need to do better. I mean, I come up against just mostly hate from straight white men just for having this podcast.
Really?
Oh, my inbox is a absolute dumpster fire of just men telling me that I am just the scum of the absolute.
Oh my
No, they
gosh.
don't say that. They call me either a feminist hoe or a low value woman. They are like the most common things that I get told. And I'm like, okay, I don't
Wow.
know what you I'm like, what
That
do you
is
want me
not
to say to
okay.
that? Like, I'm sorry that you are so
Yeah.
scared of
But
sex
I
that
think
you can't bear to hear a woman speaking
Mhm,
openly about it. Like, I'm sorry that that concept is so
mhm,
terrifying to you that you feel the need to like to tear me
mm.
down.
That blows my mind. Firstly, that people would have the audacity, but obviously, yeah, I know it's very true. Like trolling is a thing people do not have. Some people have nothing better to do with their time, and then also, I wonder if partly is also because they just want to talk to you, and they have no other way. They have nothing else to offer other than hate. So I know how I can try and talk to her. It's not okay.
I'm like, still not going to sleep with you. Some of the random little sex questions that people have sent in have been, what's the most surprising or unusual place you've ever had sex?
Surprising or unusual. I mean, what is unusual? I don't
Yeah,
know.
I know.
Like, what? You're making me blush. I don't know. I had sex quite a few places, but nowhere that I would consider
You're like, I'm
unusual.
getting the sex flashbacks.
However, do you know what I learned the other day?
What
Not
did
that
you
I'm
learn the
avoiding.
other day?
I'm not avoiding the question,
We're going
but
to rewind back to the question. Don't you worry.
so I'm in rehearsals, and we were talking about sex in unusual places,
Uh-huh.
and apparently funerals. There's a high percentage of people that hook up at funerals, and I was like, what? And so
Like physically
apparently,
there, they're like during the
yeah,
service.
wherever they do it, I do not know. Maybe at the wake,
Someone's like slipping a
slipping
finger
a
in.
finger in the pew. Maybe they're, I don't know.
Oh my
Like,
God, we're going to hell.
well, hey,
Sorry. Sorry,
my
everyone.
higher power loves me, so we're good. But yeah, it's apparently it's a thing, and I think it's to do with like the loss of life, and then something in like the bonding of life and the creation of life. Not that it's to have a baby,
Sure.
or like the kind of the fear of like something ending to begin something new, like
Yeah.
really triggers something in people. And I was like, oh my gosh. And I was like, yeah. So I don't know if you've ever had sex at a funeral.
Is this you telling us that you've had sex at a
Would that be an
funeral?
unusual place?
I think
Apparently not. Apparently everyone does it.
apparently it's the most common place that people have sex. FYI for anyone listening. um, I
Oh my
think
gosh.
I think if you were to tell your most vanilla friend the most unusual place you've had sex, what would it be?
Oh. Okay, but you tell me yours, and then I know where we're going, because so many places come into my mind. I'm like, oh, but that's that unusual.
Again, I do think unusual. I mean, I had like when I'd not long started this podcast, I had sex on a night bus, and that was definitely unexpected. I don't know about
Like
unusual.
full on penetrative.
Yeah.
Wow.
I know, hideous. I
Yeah.
lived in fear for a strong year that I was on like CCTV somewhere.
But yeah,
Mm.
I guess that's unusual, or more like public. Is
Yeah,
it? I think that's what it is, isn't it? Like the
it's
most
public.
risky,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, indecent
And what is
exposure.
your stop avoiding the question?
Some fun places. I tell you, like one of the nicest ones, which is also kind of like open, and that was just in the sea. But I feel like that's maybe a little bit
Oh,
vanilla.
I can't do in the sea. I'd be getting thrush and heartbeat. I can't be having sex in the
Oh,
sea.
I'm sorry for you. It's really fun. Yeah, and the sea was really warm, and it was at night as well. So you had stars, and like the sea, the ocean, kind of looked like velvet, and yeah, it
Oh
was
my
beautiful.
gosh.
So I guess that's quite
That's so
unusual, but it was also really
romantic.
romantic. Yeah, yeah, it was really hot.
You having a little sex flashback?
Yeah.
Do you ever get that when you like start telling a story like about a sexual encounter and you're like, "Oh, excuse me, I'm just going there in my mind for a little second."
Yeah. Do you know what else is unusual? Have you ever had sex? Sorry, I'm asking you a question. Is that okay?
No, absolutely, of
Talking
course.
about like unusual. Have you ever had sex with like someone else in the room that's not involved in the sex? I don't know why that just came to my mind, but I feel like
Babe, yes,
yeah,
so many
it's
times.
such a thing to do, right? Like when you're particularly younger and like you're like bunking in, and then like your friends are just like having sex next door to you.
I had sex with someone in my cast of a show that I did, and the rest of we were all having a sleepover in one room. The rest
Yeah.
of the cast was just there. But I like in my head, I'm like, what did I think they were
Yeah.
doing? Of course they knew, but I was just very
Yeah.
present. I was very focused on what I
Very
was
big
doing.
brother, isn't
Yeah, and
it?
obviously, as I mean, my last episode was
Mhm.
about sex
The sex
events. So
party. Yeah, I
obviously
heard
all
it.
the time at things like that and other people they're all ever people everyone else is doing their own thing anyway. But yeah, I've had sex with other people in the room more times than I'd probably care to admit.
Yeah.
That brings me back to like that party that we went when we were at college, and everyone kind of was like,
Hmm.
as they would say now, doing bits with each other. Where was it? It was in like Southampton or
It
somewhere.
was Southampton. It was Emma's
Birthday
birthday
party.
party. I know exactly what you're talking
And
about.
I was in my first relationship and trying to grasp that maybe I was a monogamous person. This is very early, in my very early days. And I was devastated because other people were in relationships and everyone was hooking up. And I was like, wait, no, I don't think this is what's supposed to happen.
Yeah, I don't know what was in that wine because you had myself who's gay and then straight girls and we were all just like, woo!
Well, quite. I was like, that was like its own little sex party.
It
But
was.
I think any listener would be surprised to hear that I was the real good girl of that event. And if anything, like upset by what was happening.
But you're not upset because you wanted to be involved.
Maybe, probably. But I was like, but I've got my first boyfriend and I think
Yeah.
I'm supposed to not be doing this.
Yeah.
And we all were quite involved with each other's partners when we were like, there was always events and we'd bring each other. I mean, we were what, like 17 years old. It's giving like married and like weddings, bringing you plus one.
Let's not name names either because some of these people are still married to those people. So
I'd like to think at this point we'd look back and laugh.
Yeah, hopefully. But you never know.
But yeah, I do. That was quite the event. But yeah, just FYI, everyone, I was for once the good girl of a situation. Next question was, if you could design your own sex toy, what features would it have and why? And before you answer, when I came to see you in The Lion King in Germany.
Where is this going?
Well, I remember.
Reaper Barn.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
I remember I came to see you in Hamburg and we went to the Reaper Barn and you took me into some of the sex toy shops.
Mm-hmm.
And my God, my eyes were opened.
Yeah. The Germans do it well.
The Germans do it well, but the size, the sheer vastness of some of the sex toys in Hamburg.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure a lot of them are like ornaments because, or just, like collectibles.
I'm about to move house. Maybe I'm just going to have like a shrine of like German sex toys because they're quite something. If anyone hasn't been to the Reaper Barn in Hamburg and you're looking to expand your sex toy horizons, I would recommend.
Yeah, that Reaper Barn, it's like a street of like sex shops, really. Good fun.
It was a great place, actually. I feel like a very sexually empowering environment just in general. But yes, if you could design your own sex toy, would it be as big as one of the ones in the Reaper Barn?
No.
You're like, maybe not.
Oh, it's a really good question, though. I've never really given that any thought. It would be designed for my partner more than anything. Or maybe something that we could, well, I mean, I would be enjoying it if we were using it together anyway, but something for them to enjoy, something that I could control from like really far away. I know they already have those, right?
Yeah.
But I don't know how far you can
do them across country now.
Oh, wow. Yeah, because that's where I was going to go with that, is like from across country, maybe even one that talks.
Oh, yeah. You can record some audio porn for your partner. That's cute.
Or even like taking it even further, like, because I know you can control it like with maybe speeds and like movements and whatever.
Yeah.
We're talking about, but maybe even if you could like, like the Wii, I'm sure we've moved on from Wii's these days, but something which if I'm like being able to like do the movements that they feel the impact. So it's almost like we're able to have sex.
There must be something like that on the way with all that sort of virtual reality stuff.
Exactly. It's like that.
Just put the headset on and off you go. A great old time.
Yeah, but like, multiple stimulation from front and back would be great.
Just a really multi-sensory experience. Mine is so boring in comparison. That was like so great and so wonderful. But I always say that I think like as a vulva owner, they haven't, and they're nailing the sex toy game for us anyway at the minute anyway, but they haven't nailed the oral sex simulator because they honestly trialed one for ages and it's gone out and it's not for me.
No.
Personally, they haven't, I don't think, quite found a way to emulate that yet. But once they do, it might just be game over for everyone. You know what I mean? Like
Game
we'll
over for all
only
the
need
straight men
ourselves.
and lesbians. Yeah, that's so interesting. Yeah, because I've seen those, but then obviously they don't also have like saliva glands, etc. And
Yeah, you'd have to get lube involved, I
yeah, but
think.
also it's not the
I
same,
mean, I'm
right?
obsessed with lube anyway.
Okay, what's your favorite lube?
Oh, the thing is, I've got to be honest, I get sent a lot of free lube. So I just kind of use whatever one I'm being sent at the time.
Yeah,
I've got like
yeah.
a huge, it's at the far end of my bedside table and I just pump it. It's just there.
I knew you were gonna say that.
It's just a love honey one at the minute, but I have like my coffee machine and my bottle
Yeah.
of lube. I can't be searching for it. It's
Brilliant.
got to just be
Yeah.
there. But down the other side of my bed is the sex toy graveyard. So it's just where like
Fun.
all of my sex toys have died and I've just moved on to the next one and they all need charging. And
They,
and and
they
so I
end up
just
there.
keep getting new ones and I'm like, no, you're gonna have to charge them at some point. But I love that. I love that yours was so extensive.
I can't really picture it though, but I know what I would like it to do.
I'm nervous about the virtual reality because will we need we need each other.
But I'm really desperate to try even just like the VR glasses, like the 3D porn. Apparently, it's quite good.
Yeah, but we don't want it
I
to be
put,
too good. We'll all just no, we'll never be bothered. We won't be asked. You know what I mean? I'll never shave my legs again.
yeah, but it's still just like being. You're not getting the same stimulation, like as
Yeah.
far as like interaction.
And to be fair, I do think it's a good solution for long distance partners as well.
Mm-hmm.
What's the most adventurous thing you've ever done in the bedroom?
I didn't know it was going to be so sexy, most adventurous.
Or maybe, I guess, sexually, because it might not have been in the bedroom. It might have been in the fucking sea.
Again, maybe I don't know. Maybe like a three-way or more that's quite adventurous, I guess.
How do you feel about three ways?
Pros and cons.
I think they're only okay.
They can either be really great or yeah, they can either really work or they really don't. But just like two ways, right? They can
Right,
either
sometimes
really good
it's just
or
not
they just
happening.
don't work. Yeah. I think if you get the right combination, if it's going to be a sandwich, you want to make sure that filling is the right filling. Make sure you're using good slices of bread either side. Yeah, and then it can really work. But if you don't get the ingredients right, it can also leave a nasty taste in your mouth.
I would agree. Yeah, I think there's a lot. I think it's most people's number one sexual fantasy, but three is my lucky number, but apparently not when it comes to sex.
You can also be overstimulated. Well, I know that I definitely can be like overstimulated and then overwhelmed. There's like too much, and it's like, wow. And also like there's nothing more beautiful than just giving one person your full attention. And then you really can give it your full attention, right? But also three ways can also work if you're feeling a bit lazy. Right?
And you're like, I'm gonna sit this bit out. You're like just stroking the leg. So nice. Yeah, you look great. And another question has been, has your cultural background influenced your understanding and expression of your sexuality?
My culture definitely like influences my expression, for sure. In my upbringing, in my family, in like my heritage, my African heritage, my Jamaican heritage. My grandma was actually like white English, so like I'm also part of that culture. So again, just like multifaceted, and they all play into who I am. I think it shows in like maybe my taste in music, how I present myself, how I dress. But there isn't like one right or wrong culturally, and you have to be really careful with that. Of like black being one thing, or being seen as because you like Alanis Morissette, that is not black, or just those little like nuances, which is I find problematic. Yeah, I feel like I try to celebrate all sides of myself, and I feel quite lucky in how I was brought up and the kind of worlds that I navigate. A lot of them are predominantly white worlds, and that's just I live in this country. I'm lucky that I live in London, which is more of a melting pot. And I think working in the performing arts industry and also in the fitness industry, it's a lot more diverse. So I'm always influenced by different cultures. So my culture maybe given me that foundation, and then my gay community then builds on top of that. And also, like, the gay community, there's like different sections and different parts of it, and all of which I try and embrace and love them all, you know.
Yeah.
And it's nice because we can, as individuals, we can take and pick what works for us, and
Sure.
that's kind of what I do. Like, what works for me might not work for Joe down the road.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that's the most beautiful thing as well. Like, we get to be unique and authentic. There's only one of us, right? And you might as well live it fully and colorful. And yeah.
Obviously, your partner is white. You know, do you ever come up against, because I know interracial couples, men and women, definitely have come across some backlash, obviously completely wrongly, but is that something that's been part of yours and your partner's experience along the way?
In truth, to my face, no.
Right.
I think you can sometimes, and again, it's interesting because of the intersectionality of us being an interracial couple, but also gay.
Yeah.
So if there is a look, are they looking because
you're like, it could be so many things?
Two men holding hands. Well, exactly. Is it because I'm wearing my booty shorts? Is it because we're holding hands? Is it because I've got dreadlocks? Like, what is it? Just mind your business is what I say to them. So we've actually never come up across anything which is like been in our face negative.
Okay.
If anything, we get a lot, like, as a couple, we get a lot of compliments. That doesn't ever seem to be based on our race.
Sure.
That's being given to us. So that's really nice. I feel like being in an interracial relationship automatically adds an element to the relationship which needs to also be understood, right? And I think that is about understanding each other's cultures. And my partner's actually half German, so there's a lot of his culture which I also don't know. And you know, like, every culture, people can present themselves differently, whether it's like, when I'm like really happy, I might be like shouting or whatever it is, you know. And then if there is an understanding of what that is, it can be misconstrued or taken wrong, which then can cause problems down the road. And also an understanding of like the issues and the problems and the barriers that can be faced by each other. And then having that kind of respect to hold space for that and understand it. It's never like, even if it's not your lived experience. So I think we're very good at talking about those things when they arise. I can give an example. We went to Japan and we had like the most amazing time. And like, we're very 50-50 couple. However, we booked everything on his account. We just need the one account, right?
Sure.
Okay, on his account, use whoever's card, done, split it. Which then caused a problem in Japan, which it took a while for him, understandably, to kind of clock what was going on, because he wasn't in that experience, whereas I'm used to it. So I like called it out from the get-go. And it happened a few times and it upset me, but it was nice because it then opened up a conversation. But what actually happened was I was completely dismissed by the hotel staff in communicating. So obviously, if you arrive with your partner, you're checking in, you're holding conversation, you should be explaining to both parties where the room is, where the gym is, just all the usual concierge chat, right? Rather, it was like no eye contact to me, all directed to him.
Okay.
And I'm stood there feeling like his little bitch, like his little side piece. And I was like, oh, hell no. I have spent way too much money for this gorgeous hotel for you to be dismissing me. And it really like shocked me and caught me off guard. Because there's an element, and sometimes I like my man to just take the lead and handle it. But that's my choice.
Yeah, absolutely.
To do that and to go away and be on my phone. That's my choice. If I'm stood there, I need you to acknowledge me with respect and as a human being.
Of course.
So it's never happened. And he didn't really like pick up on it, or because she was talking to him. And then I was like, did that really just happen? He's like, what? And I was like, did you not clock it? And it was, oh, I thought it was a bit strange. And I'm like, more than a bit strange. And that really got my back up. Again, we had a conversation, but then it happened, and we're having, I forget the name of it, so do forgive me. There's like a Japanese meal where it's like multiple courses, it's really beautiful. You sit on the floor and gorgeous, gorgeous food. Again, coming in, everything is presented to him. This is this and this, this and this and this. Oh, my lovely middle-aged white man, here you go, da, 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 and I'm dismissed. This time I was like, and he could see me. He sat opposite me, and he just knew. My whole demeanor completely changed. My shoulders went up, and because it belittles you, it
Of
makes you
course.
feel less
Less
than.
than,
And I was
yeah.
like, less than. I was like, oh hell no. So then I just asked her very politely. I was like, would you mind explaining to both of us, as there are two people here? And then it was like, oh, sorry, girl, like you didn't know,
Yeah.
like you didn't know that you were giving it to him.
Oh, she's like, oh, yes, there you
Yeah,
are.
but in my mind, it's almost like she's assuming that he's paying for everything and that I am here less than as just his whatever. I don't know, and I'm sure women also have to deal with that a lot of the time.
Yeah.
You know, of like everything being directed to the man and the woman just being the chick on the side. Like, no, but that opened up a really good conversation. I think sometimes it takes my partner, not necessarily my partner, but like a partner in an interracial couple, the white counterpart, perhaps, or whatever race it is, to experience something with their partner to truly understand it,
Sure.
to actually see it.
Yeah.
And then it's tangible, and you're like, oh wow, because it's good to know, yeah, racism happens. Oh yeah, racism is bad. Until you've really witnessed it, until you've
Yeah.
actually seen it and the
Experienced it.
effect that it has, then you can really kind of empathize with it. So yeah, I think it's important conversations that need to be had and always constantly moving. And I think sometimes there has to be a level of tenderness and patience and delicacy which on approaching it from both sides. And at the end of the day, I feel like as long as you're both aligned in wanting to understand more, and if you're with the person you love, you want to know more about them and want to make their life as good as possible, you know.
Yeah,
And but
absolutely.
like I also, there's so many parts of it that I love as far as like the infusion of like cultures. And it was amazing when my partner came out to my family's wedding out in the Caribbean in Barbados, and then being in an environment again which is no longer you're the majority, but now
Yeah.
you're in a place where you're actually the minority. And again, that gives another experience to kind of understand what my everyday life is more like,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, our lives, obviously, we went to college together, have like
Hmm.
aligned kind of in a lot of ways. We've continued to work in
Hmm.
the music theatre industry. We work for the same fitness company. And also, we both decided to study psychology. Very similar paths for both of us. And I know that you're currently writing a paper
Hmm.
about Black gay men living with HIV. I'm just wondering what was
Hmm.
the inspiration behind wanting to write that?
I mean, I have multiple inspirations. I think I've done a lot of work within the community. I used to be director of events for a global charity called Impulse United,
Uh-huh.
and I was in the London chapter, Impulse London. And I was asked to head up an event by an amazing man, prolific in the gay community, called David Stewart. Rest in peace, he's no longer with us.
Okay.
And it was to head up an event to kind of look at the disparities between Black gay men and their white counterparts when it comes to accessing PrEP.
Right.
And if
Okay.
anybody listening doesn't know what PrEP is a medication which you can take prior to having sex, which then prevents you from contracting HIV. So quite a very amazing and important drug in the community to end HIV transmissions.
Yeah.
So with that being the disparity, that was kind of like my first experience in the sexual health arena, and to kind of like really understand the statistics
Hmm.
behind it. And this was years ago. And then I've done a lot of work within the sexual health arena, and that kind of like, and then psychology I've always loved. So that disparity is still there, as well as like the major disparity in HIV rates, even more so in America than in the UK, but it's still major in the UK as well. I won't give you statistics. I don't want to get it wrong.
Sure.
In America, however, it's 1 in 2, which is a lot.
Yeah.
So I just really wanting to look at that and kind of use this moment that I have whilst I'm studying psychology to kind of delve into some research which could be beneficial.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just to go back, the paper is going to be on resilience and protective factors.
Sure.
So again, making sure that narrative, I would quite like to keep that narrative positive,
Yes.
and really kind of delving into coping mechanisms, because the disparities are there. We know the disparities are there. So then once they're there, how can we make sure that we're living with HIV in a healthy,
Supportive.
thriving, supportive way. And if there's more that can be done, then what is it, and how do we make that happen? So yeah, really important work,
It
and
is,
I
yeah.
feel like I would like to work in the. I will be working in the sexual health sector. I'm sure. Just you have to manifest it, right, in the future. Yeah, and it's just it's a shame that that is the way things are, but it's just the way things are, right? So you kind of
Yeah.
take it, and then
No, that is really important work. We need to have it published. We all need to read it, because that's the kind of education we all need, because there'd be people out there going, there's no disparity, like this is the kind of stuff that people do need to read. Like I'm always banging on about sexual health and the importance of knowing how to move forward.
This is it. And I think particularly for like marginalized groups,
Yeah.
there's so many barriers and factors that prevent them either accessing care or accessing good care, and whether that's like systemic racism or financially, the list is endless, right? So it really needs to be unpicked, and it needs to be given the time. What's been quite interesting is how hard it is to do important research.
Yes.
And obviously ethically there's
the
the barriers in place, which I mean, that's just clearly the way the system works, which I'm now learning.
They're just
but,
desperate for people to not talk
back.
About sex.
Yeah, that, but also I feel like there's the research that needs to be done a lot of the time is particularly on marginalized groups, and then those groups are also classified as vulnerable a lot of the time due to the socioeconomic state. So you kind of in that catch, then the research needs to be done, but
and
then you have to be very careful because it's vulnerable, and then it can't be done. So then a change isn't going to come because the research isn't there. So we've got to push back.
All we can do is keep pushing forward.
Keep pushing forward.
Listen, I'm excited to read it. And it is
I got passionate then, didn't I?
Good. That's what we love to see. That's what we want. Everyone to feel safe and included. That's my goal with this podcast. That's my goal for like sex in general. In the end, that's what I would love, is for everyone to just feel safe and included, whatever their position is, whoever they feel they are as a person, that they feel safe, and whatever their sexual experience is safe. The last question that someone has sent in, and then I've got a couple of very quick rapid fire. The last question that someone has sent in today is, with the current social climate, because let's be honest, we all know it's a fucking shit show, what do you think are the most pressing issues facing the queer community, particularly for people of colour? People have got quite like deep today with the questions. Normally they're like, what's your favourite position?
Yeah, and I think it's really important for me to say it's only ever really in like I never speak on behalf of the queer community or speak on behalf of like the Black queer community. Like I know what I know, my experience is my experience, and I'm passionate about what I'm passionate about. And I can always do more, and I can always do better. And I try and acknowledge that. Trans rights on a whole.
Yeah.
Full stop. The state it's horrendous. It's depressing. It's more needs to be done, more needs to be changed. And we need to just stop like this, like the politicians pushing back. Like, yeah. And obviously we have the election coming up and everything, and it's kind of crucial times. And
it is,
even and we need more allies, and like, and not just like, I'm not just talking about like from the heterosexual world, like even from the queer community itself, like it's our community, like, and it's also our human race. So yeah, that needs to happen because we need to protect each other. And yeah.
My next guest on the podcast is from the trans community, and I recognize how vulnerable it is to come on and speak about that experience, because there is just so much vitriol out in the world at the moment, which is scary. My parents bought our first house. This would have been, it was before I was born. I think it was in 1985, 86. They bought their first house from a Black trans woman.
Wow. Yeah.
And I was speaking to my dad about it just the other day, and he was like, I never considered how difficult it must have been then. But I said, but also the only thing is we didn't live in the era of social media. So if you lived in like a good community bubble where like everyone around you physically and tangibly was supportive, you didn't have to see sort of the relentless hate that people I think have to see on social media in this day and age, because there's almost no escaping it. And they always talk about her, and they were like, she was just the most like vibrant, amazing. She was like the life of the party on the street. And I love that.
obviously we're seeing a lot about trans rights now, but I feel like it's really important that like it's not something that just becomes a buzzword or
Yeah.
something for now. And I think even you just saying that, like, trans people have always existed
Yeah.
and have always been in a marginalized group, and like they've done so much for like the queer community, but regardless, human beings.
Literally.
You know, like say no more, like mind your business and stop making choices for other people.
Yeah.
Let people make their own choices and give them the rights that they deserve because they're humans.
Yeah.
We are humans, you know. So yeah, that I think the only other one which like pressing is just like legislation, I think, around the world. You know, like it's Pride Month, and as much as I love a party, oh my God, do you remember when we went to Pride
Well,
together?
we went out to Pride till about 6 a.m. We were like, let's go for a Pride coffee.
we have,
And then
and we had
12 hours later, we were out on the street. The rubbish was literally like sky high.
I've literally got this image in my mind now. But yeah, and I was recently in Sitges for Sitges Pride. And as much as I love a party, and for me, what I really also love about Pride is moments to kind of connect with people from the community, allies, and just having that connection, that moment of like remembering what is important, but also just like it was illegal.
Yeah.
And around the world, it is still illegal in far too many places. Um, so that is still something that needs to be fought for, because for me, it just kind of reminds me like I have privilege. I live in the UK.
Yeah.
I can hold my boyfriend's hand. Yes, I might experience some homophobia, but I'm not going to be sentenced to death.
Yeah.
And that is really sad that people are living in fear around the world just for loving who they want to love. Yeah, it's really sad.
Yeah. So, I mean, I sometimes feel like a bit of a fraud when I like bang on about education on Pride Month and where it has to come from, because I know that I live in a space where I've always been assumed straight, and it offers straight privilege, which shouldn't be a thing, but unfortunately it is, you know, but it means that like that's the life I've lived. And then I'm constantly like, but it's not for me. It's for all, like, I know that I've lived a privileged existence. It's for all the people who are not living that existence, and for the people who are literally still fearing for their lives just for loving someone outside of what they were told they were supposed to. So yeah, I agree with you. There is still much work to do, but we'll see all the glitter and rainbows for the next the rest of July. So listen, I'm not going to say that I won't
You're
be
seeing
there.
it from me for the rest of the year, for the next 70 years.
I'm not saying I won't be there at Pride. Before we wrap up, just endings on a light note, 4 rapid fire questions. Well, it depends how long you take to think about them.
Your questions are hard.
Number 1, what is your biggest sexual ick?
High-pitched orgasms.
That is so funny.
From a guy. Yeah, I know.
I'm like, oh God, not me singing Top C's when I orgasm.
I think I can handle it from a female, but yeah, anyway.
I don't think so. I'll ask, maybe. I'll ask with my exes. Number 2, what is your biggest non-sexual turn on?
Treating other people well.
Yeah, gorgeous.
Yeah.
That. Describe your sexual personality in 3 words.
Adventurous. What the fuck? What's demure?
It's not demure, babe.
Demure, I don't think it is. Yeah, adventurous.
Wait, what?
Elegant and ratchet.
Oh, I didn't hear that last one.
Yeah, like ratchet, like rah.
You were rocking in your chair and no sound came out.
Sorry, in case you missed it, it's elegant, adventurous, and ratchet. All in one.
How can elegant and ratchet exist in the same space? But I love it.
Me, of course they can. Imagine, because you walk in elegant and then you're like, let's go.
You get ratchet.
You get ratchet. And then you're like, and then I'm elegant again.
Here we fucking go. And the last one is there anything on your sexual bucket list?
No. It's a truth. Is it a truthful answer?
No, honey, I've done it all.
Yeah, not even that. No, but I'm always here for exploration and adventure, but there's nothing specific. I quite like to just see what comes up for us. Yeah.
Absolutely. Always here to keep it elegant and ratchet. I'm obsessed. That's like such a brilliant pairing of words. But anyway, thank you so much for joining me today. And I do think that, you know, people hearing this will be helpful. People hearing about everything that's out there and the things that people do face, if they're in the queer community, if they're in the Black community, and about intersectionality. It's not something that we get to discuss all that often. It's not something that people talk about. So thank you for being willing to join me today and speak, and hopefully create a space where anyone else in that community can feel less alone.
Yeah, for sure. I had so much fun. So thank you for having me.
Friends, lovers, listeners, I hope that you enjoyed and got as much out of listening to my conversation with the gorgeous Taz as I did having it. I will say that I feel very privileged in life to have a very diverse and inclusive friendship group, support system. And so whilst that is a lovely area to exist in, it also means that I live in a little bit of a bubble, and sometimes I can be guilty of forgetting what my friends in marginalised communities are dealing with still very much on a daily basis. And I learned so much in this conversation with Taz, and this is someone that I have known for over half my life. So beyond my general day-to-day hating of politics in our country, in the world, what it reminds me to do is check my own privilege and make sure that I am checking in on my friends in the marginalised communities to make sure that they are okay, to make sure that I'm doing what I can to support them, and to make sure that I am informed and educated on what they are going through. So I hope that anyone listening who is in a marginalised community, whether that is the queer community, the Black community, or any other community, might have listened today and feel more safe, less alone. And I hope that anyone who sits in a more privileged position, as do I, that you might have learned something or picked something up, and it might encourage you to reach out to a friend today and just check in. And also celebrate the beautiful diversity that we do have amongst people, amongst humans. There's so many different facets of our identities, and they are only things to be celebrated. So I want Pride, yes, to be a month of education and information, but also a source of joy, of feeling empowered, of loving who we want to love. A huge, huge thank you again to Taz today for coming on and being so open and vulnerable about his experience. And thank you again to everyone who sent in questions. And I really hope that the answers and experiences and stories were helpful. I will be back next week with my gorgeous friend Radcliffe Baker to discuss their trans journey, and I really urge everyone to tune in to that conversation because, as me and Taz just discussed, trans rights still have a long way to go, and the more that we can tune in to people's voices and lived experiences, the better informed we can all be. Thank you for tuning in today. I will see you very, very soon. But for now, thanks for coming. Thank you for tuning in to Sex on the Peach today, and I hope that you enjoyed this week's episode. You can find and follow me on Instagram, YouTube and TikTok at Sex on the Peach Cast, and you can also get in touch with me at sexonthepeachcast@gmail.com. Please do continue to like, share, subscribe, rate and review wherever you listen to your podcasts, and I'll see you next week. Love.